When Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves were spotted together, paparazzi couldn't believe it. The night began like any other. The city streets were alive with voices, car horns, and camera flashes. Yet hidden beneath the ordinary rhythm of the city was something extraordinary. Whispers had started to spread, whispers that made the air feel heavier and the night brighter. People said that Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves had been seen together again after so many years. For some, it sounded like a dream. For others, it felt like a mystery about to unfold. Paparazzi had been waiting outside a quiet restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. No one knew why that particular place had been chosen, but the air around it buzzed with tension. Every camera lens pointed at the door, every finger hovering over the shutter button. Some people laughed and said nothing would happen. Others said they had a feeling something rare was about to take place. And then the door opened. At first it was only Sandra. She stepped out gracefully, wearing something simple yet elegant. She wasn't trying to shine, but her presence alone lit up the night. Her smile was gentle, but there was something deep in her eyes, as though she was carrying both joy and weight at the same time. For a moment, the crowd thought that was it. Maybe she had come alone. Maybe it was just another quiet evening. But then, one step behind her, came Keanu. The world froze. Even the air seemed to pause. The flashes exploded like fireworks, but, still, no one could believe what they were seeing. Keanu walked out slowly, calm as always, his face steady but kind. He didn't rush. He didn't hide. He simply walked beside Sandra, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. But for the people watching, it was more than natural. It was historic. It was like seeing two stars from the same sky, long separated, finding their way back together again. Paparazzi shouted questions. Some screamed about love, some about friendship, some about secrets. Sandra and Keanu said nothing. Instead, they shared a glance. It was small, barely visible, but those who caught it knew it carried more meaning than any word could. It was a look that spoke of years of silence, of memories left behind, of emotions never said out loud. It was a look of kindness and respect, and it was enough to silence even the loudest voices for a moment. They began walking toward the waiting car, and every step felt like a story. Sandra's hand brushed lightly against her dress, as though she was holding her own emotions steady. Keanu's hands stayed at his sides, relaxed yet strong. A quiet strength that seemed to say he would protect her if needed. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or to stay quiet. Many just stood in awe, feeling that they were witnessing something more powerful than fame. It felt human, real, almost fragile. But behind the beauty of the moment, there was tension. Both of them knew the cameras could twist stories. They knew the world could judge without understanding. Sandra had always valued her privacy. Keanu had always avoided unnecessary attention. Yet tonight they stood side by side, exposed to the world's gaze. And though the crowd only saw smiles, deep inside, both carried questions. Why now? Why here? What would happen next? The car door opened. Sandra paused for a moment, glancing at Keanu as though asking silently if they should go through with this. Keanu gave the smallest nod, almost invisible, but it carried weight. It was the kind of nod that said, "We face this together." She stepped into the car, and he followed. The door closed, and the cameras caught only the last glimpse of their silhouettes before the car disappeared into the night. But the story did not end there. Inside the car, silence filled the space. Sandra looked out the window, the city lights flashing across her face like passing memories. Keanu sat quietly beside her, his presence calm but heavy. "At last," she whispered, "do you think they will ever understand?" Her voice was soft, but it carried years of emotion. Keanu turned his head, his eyes gentle but firm. "Maybe not," he said. But we don't need them to. We just need to be honest with ourselves. The words hung in the air. Sandra's eyes glistened, and for a moment, it seemed like she might cry. But instead, she smiled faintly. "I forgot how simple you make things sound," she said. Keanu gave a small smile, the kind only he could give, humble, kind, and full of hidden pain. Outside, the cameras had already begun writing their own stories. But inside, Sandra and Keanu were beginning something far deeper. What they didn't know was that this night would not only change the way people saw them, but it would change the way they saw themselves. It would test their resilience, their kindness, and their bond in ways they never imagined. For now, though, they sat quietly in the car, carrying the weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future. Yet for the first time in years, they carried it together, and that was only the beginning. When silence carried louder truths than words, the car rolled through the streets of Los Angeles, its windows tinted, its path hidden from curious eyes. But no glass was strong enough to keep out the storm of voices behind it. Online, pictures were already spreading. People were posting, tweeting, and whispering. The world had seen Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves together, and it couldn't stop talking. Inside the car, the atmosphere was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that held meaning, the kind of silence where two people knew. There was more to say, but neither wanted to be the first to break it. Sandra's fingers tapped lightly on her lap, a rhythm of nerves. Keanu stared out the window, calm yet distant, as though searching for answers in the blur of streetlights. Then, almost suddenly, Sandra spoke. "It feels strange," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but her words cut through the silence like glass. Keanu turned his head slightly, his eyes thoughtful. "What does?" he asked. Sandra hesitated, then sighed. "This. Us. Being seen again. I thought that part of my life was behind me." Keanu studied her for a moment. There was no judgment in his eyes, only quiet understanding. "Sometimes the past comes back," he said gently. "Not to haunt us, but to remind us of who we really are." His words lingered in the air, and Sandra looked at him as though she was seeing him in a new light. She had always admired his calmness, his ability to take life's storms and face them with grace. But tonight, that calmness felt different. It felt like strength she could lean on, strength she had forgotten she needed. The car stopped at a red light. Outside, a group of people recognized them through the tinted glass, their voices muffled but excited. Someone shouted Sandra's name, another screamed Keanu's. The flashes returned. In that brief moment, the world outside reminded them that they were no longer invisible. Keanu sighed softly, almost to himself. "You know they'll make up their own stories," he said. "They'll guess, they'll twist, they'll turn everything into something we didn't say." Sandra gave a faint, tired smile. "They always do. But maybe that's not what matters anymore." Her words carried a weight that made Keanu look at her more closely. "What do you mean?" he asked. Sandra hesitated again. Her hands tightened together as though she was holding on to courage. "I mean, maybe it's time I stop running from what I feel. Maybe it's time we both stop pretending like the years haven't mattered." The light turned green. The car moved forward. But inside, the moment froze. Keanu's expression didn't change quickly. His face stayed calm, but his eyes betrayed something deeper, something caught between surprise and recognition. For years, both had carried their own lives, their own pain, their own victories. They had moved through worlds apart, yet somehow, always tied by invisible threads. And now, in this quiet car, Sandra's words were unraveling those threads and weaving them into something new. Keanu finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "You're not the only one who's been thinking that." Sandra's breath caught. She turned to face him fully, her eyes wide, her emotions raw. In the glow of the passing streetlights, her face seemed almost fragile. Keanu didn't look away. His honesty was firm, but his kindness softened it. "I thought of you more times than I can count," he continued. "Every time I saw your smile in an interview, every time I heard your laugh in a film. It never left me, Sandra. You never left me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly, not wanting to look weak. Yet in front of Keanu, she didn't need to hide. "I was scared," she admitted quietly. "Scared that if I reached out, you'd be too far. Scared that I had already lost you." Keanu shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "You could never lose me. Not then. Not now." The car turned a corner, heading toward a quieter street. The noise outside grew distant. Inside, the world felt smaller, safer. For the first time that night, Sandra leaned back against the seat, her body relaxing as though she had been carrying a weight for years. Keanu glanced at her, noticing the change, and his own shoulders softened. When the truth knocked louder than the past, the hotel lobby was quiet, almost too quiet. The lights were dim and golden, giving the place a warmth that felt safe. Yet beneath that comfort was a tension that neither Sandra nor Keanu could ignore. Every step they took echoed faintly as though the building itself was listening. They walked side by side, but their silence was different now. It wasn't the silence of fear or discomfort. It was the silence before a storm, the kind of silence that holds secrets waiting to break free. Sandra's heart beat faster with every second. Keanu's face remained calm, but his hands were slightly tight, betraying the storm inside him. As they reached the elevator, Sandra finally whispered, "You said you had something to tell me." Her voice carried both hope and fear. She wanted answers, but she was terrified of what those answers might be. Keanu pressed the elevator button and looked at her gently. "Yes," he said. "And once I tell you, nothing will be the same." The doors slid open and they stepped inside. The elevator rose slowly, and with each passing floor, Sandra felt like she was being pulled deeper into a moment she could never escape. She stared at Keanu, searching his face for clues, but his calmness gave nothing away. Finally, they reached the top floor. The doors opened to a quiet hallway, the carpet soft, the lights dim. Keanu led the way to a private lounge, a place few people ever saw. Sandra followed, her breath unsteady. Inside the lounge, the city stretched out before them through tall, glass windows. The skyline glowed, the lights flickering like stars scattered across the earth. Sandra walked to the window, pressing her hand lightly against the glass. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Keanu stood behind her, his voice calm but heavy. "It is. But beauty doesn't always last. Sometimes it's just a mask hiding the pain beneath." Sandra turned, her eyes sharp now, no longer willing to stay in the dark. "Keanu, stop speaking in riddles. Just tell me. What is it that you've been carrying all these years?" For the first time that night, Keanu's calmness broke. His eyes glistened with emotion he had tried to bury. He stepped closer, his voice low but trembling. "The truth is, I wanted to tell you how I felt long ago. I wanted to tell you that He paused, his chest rising as though the words were too heavy. "That I loved you, Sandra, but I didn't. I stayed silent. I thought it would protect you. I thought it was kinder. And because of that silence, we lost years we can never get back." Sandra's breath caught in her throat. Her hand lifted to her chest as though her heart had physically been struck. She stared at him, her eyes wide, her body frozen. You loved me?" she whispered. Keanu nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I still do." The room seemed to spin around her. Memories came rushing back. Moments on film sets, quiet laughter, long conversations, unspoken glances. She had felt it too back then, but she had buried it, convinced it was only her imagination. Now, standing in front of him, hearing his words, she realized she had never been wrong. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced herself to speak. "Do you know how many times I wished you would say those words? Do you know how many nights I lay awake wondering if it was just me?" Her voice cracked. "And now, after all these years, you choose tonight to tell me?" Keanu's face was full of pain, but his voice was steady. "I was afraid, Sandra. Afraid that I would ruin what we had. Afraid that my love would only bring you burden. But, seeing you tonight, standing beside me again, I couldn't stay silent anymore." She turned away, pressing her hand to the glass again, tears slipping down her face. The city lights blurred as her vision filled with water. "You don't understand," she said softly. "Your silence didn't protect me. It broke me. Because I felt it too, Keanu. I always felt it." Her words hit him harder than any headline ever could. His chest tightened, his throat ached, but in that pain was also relief, relief that she had felt the same, even if they had lost so many years. They stood there, the truth finally between them, raw and unfiltered. Yet just as the moment began to soften, just as their hearts began to heal, a sharp knock came at the door. Both turned sharply. Sandra's tears froze. Keanu's calmness returned instantly. The knock came again, louder this time. Keanu frowned, stepping toward the door cautiously. "Who could know we're here?" he muttered. Sandra's pulse raced. The world had already seen them together tonight. Was it possible the paparazzi had tracked them down so quickly? Or was it something else? The knock came once more, firm, demanding. Keanu glanced back at Sandra, his eyes warning her to stay calm. He opened the door slowly. Standing there was not a photographer, not a fan, but someone neither of them expected. A figure from the past. Someone who knew the truth about their story long before the world ever guessed it. And with their arrival, everything Sandra and Keanu thought they understood about the night was about to change. When the past walked back into the room, the door opened slowly, and time seemed to pause. Sandra's breath caught in her chest. Keanu's eyes sharpened, and the golden light from the hallway fell on a face that both of them instantly recognized. Standing there was Gregory Michaels, a film producer from their earliest days together. He was the man who had been there during the first project where Sandra and Keanu met. The man who had seen their chemistry on screen before either of them realized it themselves. Gregory's eyes were heavy, lined with years of experience and secrets. He looked at them with an expression that was neither anger nor joy, but something more complicated, like someone holding knowledge too heavy to carry alone. "So," Gregory said slowly, his voice calm but piercing, "after all this time, you two finally stand in the same room again." Sandra froze, her heart pounding. Keanu remained still, though his fists clenched slightly at his sides. "Gregory," Keanu said quietly, "what are you doing here?" The older man stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You think the world doesn't watch? You think the cameras outside that restaurant didn't send signals straight to me? I knew this night would come. I knew eventually the two of you would find each other again." Sandra's throat tightened. "Why are you here?" she asked. Her voice carried both fear and anger. Gregory looked at her with eyes that had once been kind but now carried shadows. "Because you deserve to know the truth," he said. "A truth that neither of you have spoken. A truth that was buried long ago." Keanu's voice grew firmer. "What truth?" Gregory stepped closer, his gaze shifting between them. "The truth about why you were kept apart? The truth about why every time you got close, something pushed you away?" Sandra's eyes widened. "What are you talking about? It was life. It was work. It was timing." No, Gregory interrupted sharply, his tone cutting like glass. It wasn't just life. It was me, and others like me. People who thought that if you two came together, you would be unstoppable. People who feared that your bond would outshine every story we tried to tell. So we made sure it never happened. The room fell silent. Sandra's face paled, her body trembling. Keanu's jaw tightened, his calmness nearly breaking. "You mean to tell me," Keanu said slowly, his voice low and dangerous, "that all those missed chances, all those walls we thought were coincidence, were built by you?" Gregory nodded. "Yes, and I regret it now, because what I tried to keep apart only grew stronger. Tonight, when the world saw you together, I realized something. I cannot hide it anymore. The world is ready to see the truth, but only if you both are brave enough to face it." Sandra sank onto the sofa, her mind spinning. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not just from pain, but from anger. "All these years," she whispered, "all the silence, all the loneliness. It wasn't just fate. It was you." Keanu sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. His touch steadied her, his presence reminding her she wasn't alone. He looked at Gregory, his eyes cold but controlled. "You had no right to decide our lives," Keanu said. Gregory lowered his head. "I know. I thought I was protecting careers, protecting images. But I see now I was only destroying something far greater. That is why I came tonight, to confess and to warn you." Sandra lifted her head, her eyes burning. "Warn us about what?" Gregory's voice dropped, heavy with dread. "The same people who once silenced your bond will try again. The world saw you tonight, and they will not stop until they twist this story into something that benefits them. You need to be ready, because the storm is coming." A chill swept through the room. Sandra leaned into Keanu slightly, her fear mingling with her resolve. Keanu's arm tightened around her, his eyes never leaving Gregory. "Let them try," he said firmly. "This time, we won't break." Gregory looked at them, his eyes glistening with a rare softness. "Then you must fight not only the voices outside, but also the doubts within. Because love, real love, will test you harder than any enemy." He turned, his footsteps echoing as he walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped and looked back. "Remember this. The cameras will tell one story, but only your actions will tell the truth. Don't waste this chance again." The door closed, and silence filled the lounge once more. Sandra sat frozen, her mind replaying Gregory's words. Keanu stared at the city lights, his jaw tight but his heart steady. Finally, Sandra whispered, "Keanu, what if he's right? What if they try to tear us apart again?" Keanu turned to her, his hand cupping hers gently. His voice was soft but strong. "Then we hold on tighter. We've lost too much time already. I won't let anyone take you from me again." Sandra's tears fell freely. But this time, they carried something new, hope. She leaned against him, her heart racing but alive. Outside, the city lights continued to burn, and the world continued to talk. But inside that room, something powerful had awakened. They had faced the truth. They had faced the past, and now they had to face the storm together. When the world turned their silence into noise, the next morning came faster than either Sandra or Keanu expected. The first rays of daylight crept through the curtains of the hotel lounge where they had fallen asleep on the sofa, still sitting close, their hands unconsciously intertwined. The night had been heavy, filled with confessions and unexpected truths, but the morning carried something different: exposure. While they rested in the quiet, the world outside was anything but calm. On television screens, their faces were everywhere. Online, their pictures trended across every platform. News anchors spoke in urgent voices. Gossip shows replayed the same clip of them leaving the restaurant, and tabloids screamed headlines that stretched the truth far beyond reality. "Are they finally together?" one headline asked. "Secret. Romance exposed!" another shouted. "Sandra and Keanu hiding more than just friendship?" The noise was deafening. What had been a private night of truth had now become a public storm. Sandra woke first, her phone buzzing endlessly on the table. She reached for it, her eyes still heavy with sleep, and gasped as she saw the notifications flooding her screen. Missed calls, messages, headlines. Her entire world was on fire. Keanu stirred beside her, his calm eyes opening slowly. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, his voice steady even in the chaos. Sandra held the phone out to him. "Look, he took it." His face unreadable as he scrolled through the endless flood of stories. His silence said more than words. Finally, he set the phone down and looked at her with steady eyes. "We knew this would happen." Her hands shook. "But not like this, Keanu. They're twisting everything. They're turning us into something we're not." He reached over and gently held her trembling hands. "They don't know us, Sandra. They don't know what we said last night, what we felt. All they see are pictures. Only we know the truth." But the storm outside wasn't only about headlines. It was bigger, stronger, and far more dangerous than they realized. By midday, offers started arriving from studios, producers, and networks. Everyone wanted a piece of their story, and mixed within those offers were warnings. One message stood out. It wasn't from a journalist. It wasn't from a fan. It was anonymous, written in cold, sharp words. "If you value what you have left, stop this now. Stay apart. The world doesn't need your truth." Sandra's breath caught as she read it aloud. Her eyes filled with fear. "Keanu, they're threatening us." Keanu's expression darkened, though his voice remained steady. "This is exactly what Gregory warned us about. They will try to control us. They will try to silence us again. But we can't let them." Sandra shook her head. "What if they hurt our families? What if they drag everyone into this mess?" He leaned closer, his eyes firm yet kind. "Listen to me. They can write what they want. They can threaten all they like, but they cannot take away what we decide for ourselves. We've already lost too many years to fear. I will not let fear win again." His words struck her deeply, but the fear still clawed at her chest. She stood and walked to the window, staring down at the crowd gathering outside the hotel. People had begun camping on the sidewalks, holding signs, cameras flashing endlessly. Some signs carried love, others carried mockery. Both felt heavy. Sandra whispered, almost to herself, "How do we fight against the whole world?" Keanu joined her at the window, standing quietly beside her. After a long pause, he said, "We don't fight against the world. We live above it. We live honestly, so no matter what story they write, we know the truth." She turned, her tears falling freely now, but her heart slowly finding strength in his words. "You make it sound so simple," she said with a weak smile. He touched her cheek softly, wiping a tear away. "Because love, at its heart, is simple. It's the world that makes it complicated." Their moment was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Both of them stiffened instantly. Keanu walked carefully to the door and opened it. Standing there was Gregory again, his face pale, his eyes urgent. "It's worse than I thought," he said quickly. "The networks, the studios, the press, they're not just after your story. They're trying to break your image, destroy your names, make you turn on each other. If you let them, they will succeed." Sandra's knees weakened. Keanu guided her back to the sofa, never letting go of her hand. "Then what do we do?" he asked Gregory calmly. Gregory looked at them with intensity. "You do the one thing they don't expect. You tell your story yourselves. You take control before they twist it further. Go public, but on your own terms. Sandra's eyes widened. Go public? Do you know what that means? It means no privacy. It means opening wounds we kept hidden for years. Gregory's tone softened. Yes, but it also means power. If you stay silent, they win. If you speak your truth, you win. Not just for yourselves, but for everyone who believes in love, kindness, and honesty. Keanu leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. He looked at Sandra, studying her trembling hands, her tear-streaked face, and the fire in her heart that had not yet been extinguished. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady and resolute. Then we speak. Together. Sandra stared at him, her chest tightening. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, he said. The room filled with silence again, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence before a choice that could change everything. Because in that moment, Sandra and Keanu knew if they told their story, the world would never see them the same way again. It could lift them higher than ever before, or it could tear them down completely. Yet as they sat side by side, hand in hand, they also knew one thing. They were ready, and the storm outside was about to hear their truth. When the truth became louder than the storm, the decision had been made. No more silence, no more fear. Sandra and Keanu would tell their truth to the world, not through rumors, not through paparazzi lenses, but in their own voices. That evening, as the city lights blinked awake, they sat side by side in a quiet studio, room that Gregory had arranged. No bright sets, no makeup, no rehearsed lines. Just 2 chairs, a camera, and the raw honesty they had carried for years. Keanu glanced at Sandra before they began. His calm gaze steadied her trembling heart. Ready? He asked softly. Sandra took a deep breath. Yes. For the first time in a long time, I am. The red light on the camera blinked on. The world outside didn't know it yet, but within moments millions would watch. Sandra began. Her voice was gentle, but it carried years of weight. People have made stories about us for decades. Some were kind, some were cruel, and most were untrue. But today, we want to share our truth. Not because we owe it, but because we no longer want to hide behind silence. Keanu leaned forward, his steady voice filling the space. We met years ago, and what began as friendship grew into something deeper, something neither of us knew how to name. But we stayed silent. We thought it was safer that way. And in that silence, we lost time. Precious time we can never get back. Sandra's eyes glistened, her hand reaching for his. She continued. Last night, when the cameras caught us together, it wasn't planned. It wasn't for attention. It was 2 people finding each other again. And now, we want to live honestly, no matter what anyone says. The honesty in their words struck deeper than any headline ever could. Across the world, viewers sat frozen, fans, critics, strangers, all listening to something real in a world, full of noise. But as the video spread, the reactions poured in. Some cheered, sending love and support. Others doubted, questioning their motives. The storm was still there, fierce and unrelenting. But for the first time, Sandra and Keanu were not afraid of it. Days passed. The media circus grew, then began to fade. But something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking them, the truth inspired millions. People spoke about courage, about second chances, about the beauty of honesty. Their story became more than gossip. It became a reminder that love and kindness could survive even in the harshest light. Sandra and Keanu walked through it all together. Hand in hand, they attended events, spoke openly, and refused to let the noise divide them. There were challenges, yes, moments of doubt, moments of exhaustion, but each time they leaned on the bond they had rebuilt. One evening, weeks later, they returned to the same quiet restaurant where it all began. No paparazzi waited outside this time. No cameras flashed. It was just them, sitting across from each other, sharing laughter that was lighter now, freer. Sandra looked at Keanu, her smile soft but steady. "Do you realize what we did? We turned their storm into our strength." Keanu's calm smile deepened. "We didn't just survive the noise. We found ourselves in it." Her eyes grew emotional, her voice breaking slightly. "I lost so many years thinking I missed my chance with you. But maybe this was always how it had to happen. Maybe we had to walk through the silence to understand the value of finally being heard." Keanu reached, across the table gently taking her hand. "The past is gone. What matters is now. And now I'm here. With you." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they carried no pain, only peace. Outside, the city was alive as always, but inside that small corner of the world, Sandra and Keanu had found something rare. Not fame, not perfection, but something stronger. Truth, resilience, and a love that had waited patiently through years of silence. The story that began with a flash of cameras ended with something the cameras could never truly capture. Two hearts finally unafraid to walk in the light together, and for the millions who watched, their journey became a reminder. Sometimes the most powerful story isn't the one written by the world, but the one we finally dare to write for ourselves.